No, but not your folks. It's not your folks. Oh, yes. Yes. Well, this is
your cell phone.
I'm good. Multi-layered.
You and the Dylan and Caleb here in Denver with you.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, exactly. And then they can, cause trouble in your neck of the woods as well. I mean, I always have favorite. Always. I always have white sun.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story.
Yes. Yeah. That is a very different animal. You're already pre-wet.
Yeah. There's more.
Yeah, there's.
It's usually been different. I know. I've become very thin-skinned in San Diego.
Yeah,
Like Chicago, I'd be like, this is nothing.
Yeah, they are. Where it's more like bipolar in regards to the weather. Like Saturday it was 70, and then Sunday it was 30.
The family's been get seated. So we have some open chairs. Please don't be bashful. And if I can invite you much closer without my rabbi, sir.
First, I want to thank you. We're all part of Sid's family here. It's nice to have Bruce's family here as well. I'm one of the lucky few who knew Bruce when he was Bruce. I don't know if you know that he loved shul music. He loved chazanis. He especially loved choir singing. And one of his favorites was the Max Janowski Avinu Malkeinu. So I'm going to start off with a little of that. And then the Psalm 23. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Chadesh Aleinu, Shana Tova, Yizmor LeDavid, Adonai Elohim lo echsar, Binoteshe yarbitzeni al mechot yenaleni, nafshi yeshover yancheni b'magle tzedek toy leman shemo gam ki meilech b'getz al mavet lo yira ra ki ata imadi shivdecha u'mishanetecha hema yenachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorai tishan tavashem en roshi kosir revaya achtov v'chesed yidefuni kol yemei chayai v'shaveti bevet Adonai leorech yamin.
This hour of sadness, let us hear the voice of the psalmist as he brings us the message of God's nearness and our fellowship with Him in light and in darkness, in joy and in sorrow, in life and in death. Kinder Goldstein just chanted Psalm 23 in Hebrew. Let us offer it together in English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our redeemer, the mysteries of life and death are beyond our understanding. We are perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those who we love. 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go. You endure forever. We're always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life, trusting in your love and in your judgments. O Lord in heaven, strengthen those who mourn the loss of Bruce Methner. Help them to look beyond this moment, to realize that death can never destroy the bonds of your everlasting love. Sustain them with the knowledge of our faith that you do not abandon souls to the grave. You, O Lord, have taught us the way of life. Through you, we gain eternity. Let us all sing. Amen. The book of Psalms, King David implores God, Al tikacheni kodem zmani. Do not take me before my time. Tradition tells us that King David died on a Shabbat at the age of 7. Was that before his time? You can only ponder. Bruce Methner, Eliyahu ben Zvi Verut, who left this world this past Shabbat, was a little over 69 years old, almost as old as King David. But by today's standards, an age quite a bit younger than the statistical life expectancy. It seems like Bruce was taken before his time, that he was robbed of years. The fact is, Bruce's time on earth began winding its way to this past Shabbat and to today, 2013, when he was first diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia. It was then, and still is today, an untreatable disease with no known cure. It was heartbreaking to witness the unceasing illness and the toll that it took on him. It was heartbreaking as well to see the toll it took on those nearest and dearest to him, especially his two wonderfully accomplished, beautifully sensitive, and much wiser than they should be at their age children, Jason and Cameron, and his brother, Sid. On many levels, it was a complicated situation. The impression I have after talking at length with Sid and then after yesterday's online family meeting is that there were two Bruce Methners. One BFTD, before frontotemporal dementia, and the other AFTD. And I think all of us, even those who may not have known Bruce or those who knew him and hadn't seen him in many years, might all instinctively grasp that distinction. But it was more than that. Bruce was indeed a highly educated, professionally driven, and accomplished man who made a mark in a long career as an IT consultant, specializing in airline ticket reservation systems and software. He worked for IBM, consulted with Continental Airlines, American Airlines, Republic Airlines. I only wish he had done some work with Southwest Airlines on October the 4th, when my flight was canceled and couldn't get another one for 4 days. I think that if he had worked with them, that might never have happened. And I know that I, along with countless others, would have appreciated that. I certainly appreciated learning that Bruce was a dedicated Jew who loved Judaism, who loved his synagogues from his youngest days at BMH to his adult years at Brit Shalom in Houston, where he was a regular at the Minyan, at Talmud classes, and as Cantor Goldstein has already mentioned, his beloved choir. Bruce had an amazing love for Jewish music, especially liturgical music. And he was an exuberant and joyful chorister who, according to his cantor and my friend and classmate David Progress, now in Detroit, with whom I spoke yesterday, was the anchor of the tenor section for years, and who helped the choir evolve from a ragtag group of rank amateurs into the highly proficient ensemble. Early 90 videos of one of the many choir parties was shared with me, and you could see the sheer delight and joy on Bruce's face as he, along with other members of the choir, parodied selections from Fiddler and other noted shows. Cantor Propus had already heard of Bruce's death when I called, and he wanted me to extend his condolences to you, Jason and Cameron. He remembers seeing, and I might add, hearing all of you in synagogue, and recalls your bar and bat mitzvah occasions with great fondness. I said before there was a somewhat complicated situation, and not only because of the BFTD and AFTD, but life in general is complicated. Nothing really is as it always seems. In our tradition, we have the prophet Elisha. Elisha took over the reins of prophetic leadership from the prophet Elijah. Elisha is depicted in our tradition as being an amazingly sensitive and miracle-working individual, providing food for those that had nothing in their house, as if by magic, and raising a dead child to life with no mirrors, it was like a trick. No one knows how it was done. But then there are a couple other moments where Elisha is depicted as being a little bit less than fully worthy, castigating children for maybe making fun of him or saying something wrong or disappointing him, It's a mixed bag, and yet Alicia was remembered more for the miracles than for anything else. It's true for all of us, and it was true for Bruce as well, that there were moments of wonderful sensitivity. He was an intensely private individual who carefully guarded his interactions with others. And perhaps within the confines of the family and those nearest and dearest, when maybe a guard is let down and maybe you take a few things for granted or a few more things for granted. Tempers were lost, words came out. That is part of life. And at this moment, you have to try to find the balance and try to navigate this less than perfect kind of situation. Who among us is perfect? I appreciated my conversations with Sid and with Cameron and with Jason. And representing the family, I'm going to call upon Sid and Jason. Looks like Sid is going to go first. So many of you here, all of you here, know Sid. And Sid is beloved by 2 congregations. That's not always an easy thing to accomplish. And yet, here he is. And I ask you to give him your attention.
Good morning. I'm Sid Methner, Bruce's sole sibling and younger brother. I'm going to interject a preamble here that's not on my prepared remarks. I will be somewhat repetitive of Rabbi Haitovsky's beautiful tribute to my brother. Having worked with my brother on a number of projects, his expectation of me would be to be delivering a complete summary. And it would be an injustice to him if I did not stick to what I have already prepared. So with all due respect, Rabbi, thank you. I want to thank everyone for attending today in person and online. Your connection to Bruce or the family is appreciated. Today is about comfort for mourners, as well as Bruce's neshama, his soul. Bruce passed last Saturday from an illness that transcended well over 8 years. Before peeking into Bruce's life, it's imperative to thank my nephew, Jason, for taking on the guardianship of his father. It's been a huge role, many hats to wear, full of countless challenges. Ask for this responsibility. I asked him to take the 5th commandment, honor your mother and father. That request is the most difficult one I have ever made of anyone. In true Methner tradition, he said, let me think about it. After his bachelor party weekend at baseball spring training in Sarasota, just weeks before he and his fiancee, Molly, got married, I got, okay, I'll do it, but you have to help me. No one could have done better with all of this than Jason, and I knew that when I asked him. I am grateful to my niece, Cameron Teach, Jason and Cameron's mother, Ellen Orsick, for their trust, support and contributions to Bruce's care, and to Paul Orsick, Ellie's husband, for his tolerance, patience, and grace while Bruce's illness ran its course. I can never thank Molly enough for her stoicism throughout this extended period of time. As many of us know too well, long-term care doesn't happen without professionals dedicated to helping in so many ways. Thank you to the staff and management of Addington Place in Houston for the 86 months of care they provided Bruce. My sincere appreciation to everyone at Feldman Mortuary for their compassion and assistance to the Methner family for more than 60 years, and now well into 3 generations. We struggle to find good in the illnesses that befall our loved ones. I don't have to look far for that. Bruce's illness has given me the opportunity to become much closer to Cameron and Jason than I ever imagined possible. Thank you, Buttsy, for the best gift you ever gave me. Hold on to that notion of Cameron and Jason, please. Bruce Ellis Methner was born September 2nd, 1952 in Rochester, New York, to Harry and Ruth Methner, who lay just over here to my left. Ruth and Harry were Holocaust survivors and legal U.S. immigrants. They met in a 1947 social club for similar single Jewish immigrants my father helped organize in Rochester with his buddy and his immigration sponsor, Claude Spingarn. Family folklore has it that the two were inseparable friends for the better part of 7 years in a sector of Japanese-occupied China during the Holocaust called the Restricted Sector for Stateless Refugees, commonly known in contemporary Jewish history as the Shanghai Jewish Ghetto. Bruce is named after our maternal grandfather, Bertram Strauss, who perished in the Holocaust, and one of our paternal great-grandmothers, Ernestine Methner, passed away in Berlin in 1928. Bruce's middle name, Ellis, is significant. Our parents were the last couple married on Ellis Island in 1948 under a special order granted by the U.S. Department of State just prior to the island's immigration center closing. Bruce was one of the most observant Jews in our family. I think you would appreciate including some Torah and applying it today. Bruce entered hospice care on October 25th. The following Shabbat, October 30th, we read Parsha Chai Sarah. Abraham secures a burial plot for his wife Sarah and prepares a eulogy for her. Rabbi Haitovsky in his Devar Torah spoke of the Parsha as the origin of eulogies that we recite today. It is also where the Jewish tradition of family members writing eulogies originates. We're actually supposed to do this. I learned something that day that inspired me. I had no intention of speaking when this day ultimately arrived. The rabbi emphasized the eulogy should focus on the legacy of the family member and what they contributed to the community, with an emphasis on telling the truth. So, the story about how Bruce saving me from drowning at age 7 has to wait till another time. But perhaps that rises to a community contribution. A little more about Bruce will be prescriptive. With this context, I hope you will find Bruce's principal legacy and community contribution obvious. I did once I saw it. We moved to Denver from Ithaca, New York in 1957. Our dad worked for Mohawk Airlines as a first-class FAA licensed radio technician and took a similar role at Continental Airlines at Ben Stapleton Airfield. Bruce attended primary and secondary school in the Denver Public Schools, graduating from East High School in 1971. He was on the swim team, backstroke and butterfly, earning a letter in his junior and senior years, one of his greatest sources of pride. A strong language aptitude was apparent when Bruce was very young. In Junior Classical League, he excelled in Latin, complementing a voracious appetite for reading. He also competed regionally in speech contests sponsored by Optimist International, winning college scholarships at the district level. With help from our Uncle Lou, our cousin Joanne, and Stephen's father, and before my time, a couple of new words were permanently etched into the family lexicon. Uncle Luke called him Brucey, and what was echoed was Bootsy. Grandpa in Bruce speak was Tra-Tra. Some of the words were conceptual in nature. Gas station or service station, too simple. It became Gasmo apartment. Bruce attended Hebrew school initially on York Street prior to the converted house that served the same purpose at our current Monaco Street Synagogue campus. Bruce's bar mitzvah at BMH was in the 1968 confirmation class and was an officer at SYO, the Synagogue Youth Organization. In an act of petty vandalism during the construction of the current BMH chapel, one summer evening in 1968, we found a glass door on the side unlocked. The concrete floor of the bima had just been poured that day. Bruce's initials were carved in the floor, right under the rabbi's chair, under the carpet. Like many kids have done, Bruce attended his choice of summer camp, Camp Mosheva in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. I remember hearing about very, very large mosquitoes. The university of choice for Bruce took him to Washington, D.C., George Washington University at age 17. Mom and Dad filled the void with a dachshund beagle mix named Schnapps. Bruce always wanted a dog, and he never let them off the hook about it. Schnapps was a great playmate for me. It was a few years later when I figured out that our sibling relationship was forever changed. Bruce never came back to Denver for any significant period of time until now. At GWU, Bruce majored in international affairs and economics with a minor in Russian. There's that language thing again. And he continued right on into his MBA in finance and investment. He worked part-time at the U.S. News and World Report magazine, clipping newspaper articles for the reference department. There was no Google or internet back then. It was all about shredded newsprint. He served a couple of years in his dormitory as a resident advisor and also later managed the campus laundry service for Gordon Davis Linen Supply. Bruce's professional career followed our dad's love for the airline business, playing a version of airline employment bingo. He worked for American Airlines in New York, then transferred to Tulsa where Jason was born. From Tulsa, it was on to Arlington, Texas, and Cameron joined the family. Bruce took a position at North Central Airlines, which became Republic Airlines, which merged into Northwest Airlines. He commuted to Minneapolis from Arlington, living in, as he put it, a dingy basement apartment with one window. Having had enough of that, he switched to Continental Airlines, instigating a family move to Houston. The Continental Airlines System 1's business unit he worked for was acquired by IBM, where he finished out in 2012. While it isn't the time or place to belabor Bruce's illness in detail, we can learn from it. As Rabbi said, Bruce had a rare form of dementia called frontotemporal dementia, FTD. FTD is the umbrella term used for a group of brain disorders that primarily affect the frontal and temporal lobes of the brain. It appears mostly in men in their late 50s and early 60s, and it is somewhat rare. As Rabbi also mentioned, there is no cure today, and there are few treatment options. Congregation HEA provided a series of Alzheimer's Association awareness programs in the fall of 2013, which helped me validate something was not right with Bruce and where to look for clues. Bruce was given a probable diagnosis in 2013, unknown to anyone else until the spring of 2014. Following Jason's appointment as guardian, Bruce reluctantly moved to a secure memory facility in the fall of 2014. He stopped speaking to us in July of 2017, consistent with the aphasia disorder that can be associated with FTD. And the other effects of his FTD persisted through last week. Bruce opted into organ donation before the FTD onset. He regularly gave countless pints of blood during adulthood. Given these exemplary affirmative actions, we made a very specific organ donation to the FTD Research Center at the University of Texas in San Antonio. One of the most important things we can appreciate about Bruce and anyone we love, their passions. Number one was work, following an example set for us by our dad, and probably by his dad, Tratra. The job always came first, or seemed to. It also came with some significant costs, straining, or sometimes fracturing all types of relationships, marriages, children, siblings, extended family, and friends. Education comes in second. A premium's placed on education in our family, like every other Jewish family. With now 2 generations removed from Ruth and Harry's 1940s arrival, everyone has a graduate degree today, along with a fundamental formal Jewish education. That's Bruce, Cameron, Jason, and me. Coming in third is ritual and religious practice. Bruce began his Talmud study when Brit Shalom Synagogue in Houston initiated their program in the 1990s, late 1990s. He was a lay leader in services, especially fond of leading Shachari daily, and the high holidays were always special for him. Bruce enjoyed being part of the Brit Shalom Choir and a Jewish choral festival for many summers in the Catskills. His inspiration for singing came from our father, who had formal cantorial training in Shanghai. Cantor Marty can testify to how my father sang. The fourth of Bruce's passions, travel. Easily demonstrated by Bruce's earned elite status in 2 airline frequent flyer programs from years of worldwide work-related travel. An elite spot in over-the-top, butt in seat, as road warriors call it, Houston to Johannesburg round trip for a 2-hour meeting. I'm pretty sure that trip wouldn't happen today. He was part of a special USA Today group of travel editors that called regular quotations. Another thing he was proud of. Rounding out the list, reading and book collections from rare bookstores and flea markets, estate sales every Sunday for 50% off deals, and a good debate. With all of this, what's Bruce's legacy? Legacy is that which is handed down by a predecessor. Bruce's legacy is a manifestation of his passions. They are embodied here now, sitting right in our presence. Cameron and Jason. All of Bruce's passions are reflected today in Bruce and Ellie's children. To be clear and truthful, as parents, they work together to instill strong moral values and ethics. With Cameron and Jason in their teens, Ellie married Paul. He brought his kindness, experience, respect, love, and support to building on the existing foundation. Bruce's legacy is 2 well-educated children, reading the book of Genesis, Bereshit, commandment to be fruitful and multiply. Recently having had children of their own. They both have great, interesting professional careers and truly fabulous spouses. Jason and Molly are parents to Henry Acharon, who's closing in on 3 years old, and Rosanna Ari turned 4 months old yesterday. Cameron and Matt have Gabriel Alexander, soon to be 11 months old. A grandson, Henry, we see Bruce's aptitude for language as he converses in his unique style in English and Portuguese. With Gabe, some of Bruce's distinctive facial expressions and mannerisms are regularly on full display. With Rosanna, it's early days yet, but I think something Bruce likes coming soon. I know Bruce would have beamed with pride, like Ellie and Paul do, to see his children and their mates raising his grandchildren replete with Jewish ritual and tradition in their observant homes. The flood of Hanukkah photos and videos we saw just a couple of weeks ago are a testament. What's obvious to me too is the legacy of a brother, a father, and a grandfather. Bruce, quite simply, is family. And the truth is, always has been, always will be, and always should be, is that family is the backbone of community. Bruce's legacy is the family he created, and it's the very best contribution to the greater Jewish community he could ever give. I know Bruce wasn't perfect. Who among us is? Imperfection's a part of human life. I invite you all to honor Bruce, focusing on the positives, like I will. That will inspire Bruce's neshama to find its new place. May you all find comfort and joy in your memories of Butzi, my brother, Bruce Ellis Methner.
I didn't practice as much as Sid did, so hopefully I can get through this. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for people on the live stream. Thank you everyone here in person. It's cold. We live in California. I know this isn't that cold yet, but it's cold. So, my dad, Bruce Ellis Methner. One of my most vivid memories of my dad was the first time I made him laugh spontaneously with me based on something I said. It was Saturday morning around 1989 at Bris Shalom Synagogue in the fourth pew from the back on the right side. I was sitting in between my mom and my dad. My dad sat on the aisle and my sister was next to my mom. We were deep into the Saturday morning services and there was a scholar visiting who gave us the Devar Torah. We proceeded through Musaf, and after Musaf, the president of the shul got up to give remarks. After the instructions about the Oneg and the other events of the week happening at Bris Shalom, they presented the visitor with a gift. The president discussed how it was a surprise. They knew that the scholar would enjoy the surprise. I immediately turned to my father and asked, "What's in the bag?" Now, those of you who know my dad, one of his most persistent characteristics was his ability to answer a question without really answering a question. He had a litany of responses which are now famous in family lore, including, "We'll see," "That could